unkind, friendly, your worst enemy, charming, class, and potentially dangerous. Have you ever heard of such? I'm invisible and impossible to touch.
What's up, it's your boy, I Know Mercy the Mad Hatter, here again with another comic book review, because it's been so fucking long since I did another one of these. And the thing is, I haven't really been reading too many comics lately. I've been trying to keep up with a lot of comic book news. I've been watching a lot of comic book YouTube channels. I've heard things about the Three Joker storyline that just finished, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to dig into that exactly, especially since I've seen some really not good things about it. But it's Halloween again, and I wanted to try and do something, well, not super special, because honestly I'm not super into a lot of horror comics. That's really not where my focus has ever really been. So I basically just have to go along with what I consider horror, or horror that I'm particularly comfortable with, like Hellboy. I already talked about a couple of Hellboy stories before now. I did the first graphic novel, Seed of Destruction. I did the Hellboy storyline where he fights Nimue, the one that was tied into the movie that was coming out at the time. That was unfortunately pretty fucking terrible, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. This is the second Hellboy graphic novel, full story, Wake the Devil, essentially a sequel to Seed of Destruction. And this is, I won't say it's my favorite Hellboy story, but I think it's a really solid read. And I mean, there's nothing too Halloweeny about it, but I figured I could do something for Halloween this year, and I can always go back to Hellboy whenever I need to, because Hellboy's a shit. I really like this character, as I've already said before. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna try and keep this video a little shorter, since you know, I tend to ramble a lot, and that leads to hour-long videos. But I'm gonna try and condense this one a little bit more. The story actually starts out with some dude named Roderick Zinko finding those three people that were shown at the end of Seed of Destruction, that were waking up in that Nazi hidden base thing, whatever the fuck it was. Apparently, Rasputin has visited this dude in some kind of vision, I don't know, and gave him the instructions to find this place and find these people and like help them however he can, because this dude Zinko is like super fucking rich. A year later, skips forward, and one of the three Nazis that he's helping out, a woman named Ilsa Humstein, shoots a dude in a wax museum, and then it transitions over to the PPRD, where they're having a briefing about what the fuck is happening right now. Basically, a vampire who worked for Napoleon named Vladimir Garescu. I actually don't know how to say that dude's name, so I'm probably just gonna end up calling him Vladimir for the rest of this video. Vladimir was a vampire who fought for Napoleon's forces, and every time he was fatally injured, he was taken back to his castle by his attendants, put into a special room, then the moonlight healed him somehow, and he came back and kept fighting. And this happened like 6 or 7 times over the course of the Napoleonic War. After that, Edward Grey, and this is the first mention of Edward Grey, who is going to be a very important character later in the series. Not in this book, but just in the series in general. Kind of in the book. It's the thing. Edward Grey, who was a paranormal investigator who worked for Queen Victoria, warned her about Vladimir coming to Europe because he wanted to create a secret empire of evil within the within the British Empire. And then Hitler decided to give this dude a call. Specifically, Himmler actually went to the dude and said, "Hey, we want you to help the Nazis. Come to Germany and we'll talk." And he came to Germany, and then Hitler ordered an arrest on Vladimir and his family, which is like 6 vampire women that are just with him. Like, I guess they're his wives. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell because later in this issue, you find out that Ilsa actually had a thing with Vladimir. So, like, was he going to turn her into a vampire and then he'd have 7 wives, or were they not his wives? And there's like it's never really explained exactly what the relationship between Vladimir and these 6 women are, but it's a thing because Dracula had 3 vampire chicks just kind of around, so this dude needs them too. I don't fucking know. This is also the first introduction of Kate Corrigan, who is an important character in the Hellboy mythos. She's one of Hellboy's closest friends, and some people actually interpret a romantic relationship between Hellboy and Kate, mostly because because Kate is actually based on Mike Mignola's wife. So I think Mignola kind of writes Hellboy and Kate's dialogue in a very similar manner to his own relationship with his wife. That's why it can kind of come off as romantic. Kate's actually a really interesting character. I really like her. So she explains the whole thing with Garescu, everything that's happening. Tom Manning, of course, brings up that Ilsa murdered this dude in the wax museum, and turns out he was actually working for the Nazis. He ran like a House of Horror freak show, like that sort of thing. And when it was sort of the writing was on the wall that the Third Reich was going to crumble, he ditched out. But he actually managed to get his hands on Vladimir's body. So, like I said, Ilsa had a thing for Vladimir, so she killed the dude, took the body, and the BPRD is under the impression that they're going to try and recreate the ritual that Garescu went through during the Napoleonic Wars and revive him. And that's their mission. Stop that from happening. They also find the symbol for the Project Ragnarok that we saw all over the place in Hellboy Seed of Destruction, and of course Hellboy notices this. And on their way to the mission, Abe actually mentions that he notices that this is bothering Hellboy in some way, and Hellboy mentions that he's been thinking about things ever since he fought Rasputin, and if the Nazis really did bring him to Earth, and where he came from, and what that means, and everything like that. And he mentions going to the church. The first issue of Seed of Destruction took place in, and he kind of came to the decision that he likes not knowing where he comes from, that he sleeps better not knowing, and that's basically going to be his attitude towards most of the shit that he has to deal with concerning where he comes from for the remainder of most of the series. We also see more of the Nazis. They're doing shit. Ilsa, like I said, is with Vladimir's body, and it's like she recites a William Blake poem to him for some reason. I kind of know what it means, but it's still a little weird. And instructs 2 of the Nazis that are working for it, because there are still Nazis. Of course there's still Nazis. I say that in 2020. Of course there's still Nazis around. But the other 2 Nazis that were with her, Leopold and Rupert Cronin. Cronin? I think that's his name. I don't know. They'll say it later. They're kind of worried that because Ilsa had a thing with this guy, that's going to interfere with their overall plans, and they're basically using him to create a vampire army And Cronen's basically like, yeah, the vampire army thing, that'd be cool, but like, we're making our own army, and I think that's probably going to be better. Uh, sure, they're evil, but I honestly can't really disagree with them. Like, it seems like having an army of vampires would just end up biting you in the ass, where having an army that you created yourself is probably going to be easier to control, but whatever. Like, they're the bad guys, so who gives a shit? You don't want their plan to work anyway, so yeah. Then the last scene is actually Hellboy getting ready to go to one of the three main locations that the BPRD thinks Vladimir's castle is. And he's actually using a jetpack to land, and this is the first occurrence of like a really weird running joke in this comic, where Hellboy has to deal with some form of technology that doesn't work, and for like a break, like you can see that whatever technology they're using is made by Zinco, and it's shit. I'm not sure what that means. I just know that it's a thing that constantly happens, and I think it's hilarious. So yeah, the jetpack blows up, and he just kind of crash lands right in front of Ilsa. And that's how the first issue ends, because, of course, that's how the first issue ends. It's a fucking Hellboy comic. So this issue starts off pretty much where the last one ended, with Hellboy crashing into Vladimir's castle right in front of Ilsa and a couple of other Nazis. And Ilsa apparently knows who Hellboy is, at least she's heard of him. I'm not sure if she's put together that Hellboy is the thing that Rasputin summoned back in the day, but she at least knows who she is, and she calls him a trained circus monkey or something like that. It's one of the Nazis freaks out at seeing Hellboy crash through the ceiling in a fucking fireball, because he's a giant red demon, so like that makes sense. And yeah, Elsa did just insult him, but he's just kind of focused on the fact that he is currently surrounded by like 3 or 4 Nazis, which again, fair. Yeah, because say whatever you will, you're still a Nazi, so you suck. Then this other dude who has a giant mechanical arm and can shoot his fist out like a fucking flail. He fights Hellboy for a while, but of course Hellboy kicks his ass, because of course he does. And he punches him in the face hard enough to crack the floor, and they both fall through. And then Elsa is just kind of by herself and has a flashback to the nights Hellboy was summoned, and yeah, it kind of reused a little bit of the scene that you saw from the first issue of Siege of Destruction, where Rasputin and that Nazi dude von Krumpt are arguing about the fact that nothing seemed to have happened, and then Rasputin says, "No, I made a thing happen, but you're not gonna live long enough to see it because it's a miracle for a future." And then he leaves. And then Ilsa and Cronin and Leopold, they all like follow him and say, "Well, we like are fully into whatever it is you're doing right now. Like whatever it is, we are in." And Rasputin is like, "Okay, cool." And this is actually where you find out that yes, this is in fact Rasputin, the monk, the Russian monk who was murdered by the prince. And Rasputin goes on and on about how like a thing is happening. The Nazis are gonna get their shit rocked. Hitler's gonna be dead in like 5 months. So I know you guys have a place. Go up there and just sort of hide out until I give the go ahead that we're good to go. And Ilsa was like, "Well, I can't. I gotta go back because my man's there." And Rasputin says, "Oh yeah, Hitler killed Vladimir like 6 days ago, so that's not gonna happen." And then after the flashback is over, Rasputin shows up again and is like, and he's just like there, but like he's like he admits that he's basically a ghost because Hellboy, Abe, and Liz killed him at the end of Seed of Destruction, and he does specifically mention the way each one of them uh, had a hand in him dying. Like he mentions that Abe impaled him with Elihu Cavendish's spear. Liz basically reduced him to a skeleton with her pyrokinetic abilities, and Hellboy destroyed his skeleton. And he mentioned that after that happened, he kind of went up into the sky. Like he went up into the sky, to commune with the spirits there, and then went past that and came to the Orju Jihad's prison dimension, and just yeah, I was there. It was fucking awesome. And then for you remember what I mentioned during Seed of Destruction? It had that weird 2-panel thing where it had those aliens who were monitoring the Orju Jihad's prison dimension. It kind of does the same thing, where it's just a priest somewhere in I can only assume in some Middle Eastern country, giving a sermon to warn about the Orju Jihad. It's just there. I don't know why. I guess it's a world building thing. It's the Orju Jihad is known in certain circles, and there are people who are actively trying to fight against it. I guess that's the only thing I can think is the purpose for this just complete non sequitur of a scene. But it also shows Orju Jihad in its prison talking when wasn't it supposed to be sleeping? Oh, well, though. The thing Rasputin did in Seed of Destruction, I guess that woke it up. So it's awake now in its prison, but it can't get out yet. So okay. Then it cuts to Hellboy after he fell in with the Nazi, but the Nazi's gone. His mechanical arm is still there, but the dude himself is gone. And he follows the blood trail from his arm to find him being eaten by this skeleton dude, who is, I think, Vladimir's father? I'm not sure. He says that Vladimir is my boy. He outright says his son, but the way he talks, it seemed more like he was one of Vladimir's servants. And he considers him a son, but kind of in the way that Alfred considers Bruce Wayne a son. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because Hellboy kicks his ass and kills him anyway. But before that happens, he kind of gives a little bit more backstory on where Vladimir came from and why he is the way he is. I wonder if you can hear the rain. It's raining really hard right now. I'm not sure if you can hear it. He mentions the 6 vampire women that he travels with. He mentions that they're his ladies, but again, I don't know if they're his wives or what their deal is. They're all dead. They're not coming back, so I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just, I don't know. He mentions being into Elsa, and again, I don't know if he was planning on turning her into a vampire too, having 7 wives. It's just, I don't know. So skeleton dude, he's never given a name. He admits that in 1492, which is over 300 years before the thing with Napoleon, so this shit has been going on for a while. He found the body of an ancient supernatural being. He just refers to it as her. You'll find out who it is in the next issue. I'll get to it later. But he mentions that she was kind of dead, but not really dead because it's a goddess, so they don't die the same way that mortals do. But like he went through the process of like reviving her and shit, and made like a temple. I'm assuming the castle that they're currently in is her temple that he built for her. And sometime after that, Vladimir fell off a horse and died. No, wait, he fell off a horse into a frozen river, and then he died. Like it took him a couple of days to find him, and then cut him out of the ice, and then he sacrificed all the dogs and all the servants and shit to this goddess that he revived in order to bring Vladimir back to life. And from that on, and that I guess that's how he became a vampire. So, like, yeah, like he's been a vampire for 300 years, um, before the whole Napoleonic thing. So yeah, he was a vampire for like 300 years before the whole Napoleonic War thing. So that was the thing that's happening. And after he's like telling this whole thing, he attacks Hellboy because he knows that if Hellboy finds Vladimir, he's either going to kill him again or stop him from being revived. And yeah, he doesn't want that. So yeah, he attacks Hellboy, and then Hellboy kicks his ass and kills him. What is kind of weird is that the skeleton dude hands Hellboy a book supposedly about the being that he rescued, but the book mentions Lamia, and yeah, that's not well. I'll get to it later. So Hellboy just kind of explores a little bit. The skeleton dude actually mentions a moon door that is supposedly going to lead to the place where the ritual site where Vladimir is going to be resurrected. Hellboy finds the moon door and is attacked by a bunch of bird women, and that's how the issue ends. I never noticed how, until I actually had to do these videos, I never really noticed how wordy Mignola can be, and how many, like, weird non sequiturs he'll just throw in without context. It's cool. It's always cool because Mignola's art style is so fucking unique and interesting looking, but it's like, and it is interesting world building, but it's just like, did we need to know this to understand this story? I mean, again, I'm not complaining. I'm curious how much of this is just it's just padding out the story because he doesn't think that like the story can fill up a whole 22-page issue. Also, when Ilsa and Rasputin start talking, like they just kind of fuck off. Like they leave Vladimir. They leave Vladimir's castle. Like they just fuck off somewhere and are just kind of, and like they spend like the next couple of issues just talking. Like something eventually comes of it, but it's just like they're just kind of doing their own thing for a little bit. Like it doesn't really serve much points of the story. And oh right, I forgot. They also, this isn't a non sequitur. This is actually leading into the rest of the story. They show a small Romanian village where a grandfather is talking to his daughter about how shit's about to go down, something's coming, so get your kids, have them say their prayers and sleep with their rosary beads, and then get the fuck out of town and never come back. He just outright tells his daughter, you need to get the fuck away from here right the goddamn now. And his daughter is just like, well, you're gonna come with us, right? And they, no, I can't. It's and he just says it's too late a couple of times. It's like this is what I really love about Mignola's writing style. Is like, yeah, it can be wordy, it can have weird non sequiturs, but it also like when he wants to, he can convey dread in a really real, tangible way. Like you don't know what is up with this dude, but you know it has something to do with Vladimir, and you know it's gonna be fucking bad. And it's just like in like four panels, you feel bad for this dude, even though you don't know who he is or what he's gonna do, but you know he's gonna do something and he's gonna hate himself for it. So like, yeah, that's some good solid writing. So this one starts off with Hellboy fighting the weird bird women who are. Well, it actually starts off with a definition of what these things are. They're the women of Thessaly, which are a real thing, kind of from Greek mythology. Um, I haven't actually. I can't exactly remember what they are exactly, what they were in the traditional mythology, but in this, there are a group of witches who have very supernatural abilities, and one of them is, of course, turning into birds. And and Hellboy's fighting them off. He's shooting them. He's beating them with his right hand of doom and everything like that. But his gun starts malfunctioning, and it isn't the gun he got from the Torch of Liberty, the what would eventually be known as the Good Samaritan. It's some new gun, which of course is made by Cinco, so it blows up in Hellboy's hand. And Hellboy gets really pissed off because this is the second piece of technology that he's used that is literally blown up in his face within the last 12 hours. So he just picks up a rusty short sword nearby and just get ready to keep fighting. But the witches actually fly out of the room because Vladimir is done resurrecting. But there's actually a really cool line that I want to read from because it's really cool and evocative and shows one of the main villains of this. So it's hellish, heavenly, and earthly Hecate, goddess of crossroads, witch queen, Gorgonite, terrible dark one, thirsty for blood and the terror of mortal men, Gorgo, Mormo, moon of 1,000 forms. So yeah, the thing that Vladimir's dad found, it like I said, it wasn't. It's weird because the book he showed Hellboy, it showed an image of Lamia, which is a real monster from Greek mythology, but the thing he revived was Hecate, which isn't Lamia. Like, they're two separate things. I don't know. It's like Mignola's he'll change certain things about certain mythological aspects. Like, obviously, Rasputin wasn't an immortal wizard who spoke to an ancient chaos god or anything like that. So like he does change, and even the women of Thessaly who Hellboy just fought, like they're different from what they're originally supposed to be, and Hecate is different from what she is in traditional myth, but it's kind of weird that he seems to have combined Hecate and Lamia together. Now it's it's a strange creative decision, but like overall it works, so I can't really say anything. Then Vladimir wakes up and starts saying some vaguely threatening shit to Hellboy. It's like, yeah, I'm awake and I'm fucking awesome and I'm gonna kick your ass, and Hellboy just stabs him in the chest. He starts to turn into a bird, and Hellboy stabs him in the chest, and then they fly away a little bit, but Hellboy manages to get him to crash into a crypt. He follows him, obviously, and it's like, okay, now I'm gonna kick your ass. And he's like, he has a sword still in his chest while he's laying in a shallow pool of water, and Hellboy tries to grab him, but then he turns into snakes, and Hellboy just kind of leaves. And Gotti shows up then a little bit later, and Vladimir's just like, okay, yeah, he kicked my ass, but like, you can help me, right? And she's like, yeah, I can help you out. We'll kick his ass for it. I'll kick his ass for you. You know, when Hecate brought Vladimir back to life, he basically, like, he sort of became when Vladimir came back to life, he sort of became her son because he was reborn. So yeah, by her, because he was reborn by her power. So yeah, it in a mystical, like esoteric kind of way, it does make sense. It then switches over back to Rasputin and Elsa, and they just keep talking about certain shit. But this is somewhat relevant. Like he explains his whole deal. Like is it's vaguely similar to the real Rasputin. He supposedly had healing powers. He was a monk, or he was a monk working for like some sort of religious organization. I don't know much about the real life Rasputin. He worked for the Russian royal family, but this adds in that at some points when he was just like a random healer, but he was also like drinking and sleeping around and everything like that, he met with the Baba Yaga, who took a piece of his soul and actually put it in the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree from Norse mythology. I don't know why, but it's a thing that happened. And he mentions how the Russian prince killed him and he was reborn in the frozen river. And he's like, yeah, I was reborn and now you're going to be reborn because you're all into like destruction and chaos and shit. So I'm going to make it so that you are the literal embodiment of destruction and chaos. And how awesome is that going to be? And Ilsa is just, she is in. She is in. Like, she was in before, but she is real in now. And that's the thing, and that's gonna come back later. And it actually shifts over to one of the other BPRD groups that are investigating this whole thing. Because, like I said, there's 3 locations, so they sent 3 teams there. And this is the one with Liz Sherman. And part of her team is a new recruit named Sidney Lynch, who has a psychic ability to detect metal. Sydney actually asks Liz, like, okay, so you quit the BPRD, why'd you come back? And Liz kind of gives an abridged version of her backstory, how her powers first manifest, and then she killed a bunch of people, including her family. She was trained by the BPRD, and she actually mentions that she's quit over 13 times, but she always comes back because she feels like she doesn't have anywhere else to go. And the other guy that is on their team actually finds a secret passageway into an alchemist's lab. And they find an enormous homunculus, like, fucking huge. Like, normally homunculus are fairly small, like about this size, I'm gonna say. Like, and they're generally really malformed. And this one isn't like normal, like, it is malformed, but it's huge, so it's weird. And this is also a really great way that Mignola plays with color and plays with visuals a little bit, because from the moment she walked into this alchemist lab, Liz's eyes start glowing orange. And in most of the shots she's in, like, her body is entirely in silhouette, so you can only see her eyes. And so it's conveying that she's in some sort of trance or some sort of power is overcoming her and forcing her to touch this little hole in the homunculus's chest, which wakes it up. Like, it sort of starts feeding off of her power in order to like start moving again and everything like that. But she can't exactly detach herself from it. And Sydney tries to touch her and try to get her off, but just touching her burns him. So the dude they're with has to shoot her in order to snap her out of it. But then the homunculus kills this dude. And of course this dude is black, because like, I appreciate Mignola, but like, even he has to go by the fucking 90s horror movie trope where the black dude dies first. Sydney and Liz are fine, they're both hurt, but they're relatively okay. And the homunculus just runs off into the night. Then it switches over back to that Romanian grandfather we saw last issue, who was telling his daughter to get the hell away because. And now we figure out why. Because Garescu actually, Vladimir's castle is very close to this village, and most of the younger men at the time, were compelled to work for Vladimir and do shit for him. And he's afraid, and he can hear his voice in his head again, so he knows that he's coming back. And he talked to one of his old friends, who is now a priest, and says, that we have to get the fuck out of here. Vladimir's coming back. Shit's gonna be bad. Like, just take your congregation, take everything you know, and just get the hell out. And the priest is like, no, I'm gonna stay. Like, even if he does come back, I'm gonna stay and protect my town. And because, like, I'm a priest, I'm a man of God. This is my duty to protect this place. And I think that's pretty cool. But the grandfather is just like, well, fuck you then. Just starts ranting weird random insults at him. But like he also he softly says that I'm sorry to him because like he knows he's going to have to start doing this shit again. And the priest can't stop him. We also go back to Leopold and Cronin. And I didn't mention this, but Cronin is actually like the Cronin in this book is the same dude from the first Hellboy movie. You know, the guy in the full body suit with the knives and shit, but doesn't talk, but is kind of dead, but also not kind of dead. It's that same dude. It's just like it's just a Guillermo del Toro version of him. And while he and Leopold are like working on their personal army thing, Zinko comes in and says that, okay, so my people found this thing. It's a head in a jar. They want. I know you wanted to have it, and it's Herman von Klemt, who is kind of it's not exactly a recurring Hellboy villain because I don't think he shows up very often, but he is a fairly well-known Hellboy villain. He was actually in a short story that came out before Seed of Destruction. And that story was obviously canon with the rest of the series because Zinko outright says that he found him in a bombed-out ruin in South America, and that's where that story took place. Like, Hellboy fought Von Klemt and kicked his ass and blew up his lab. So that's where that was. And Cronin is like, yeah, like, we were friends. And, like, we went to university, and Himmler both brought us into the Nazi Secret Projects Division. And, like, yeah, he should have been with us in Project Ragnarok. And it's like, well, Rasputin and Leopold was like, well, fucking Rasputin didn't want him to be here, so he probably shouldn't be here. And Cronin is like, well, fucking, he can make one mistake, right? That's cool. It's weird because it's really easy to make like the Nazis just blatantly evil, and clearly they are. But I gotta always appreciate it when writers like make very clearly evil characters like have some degree of humanity. Like, it doesn't like excuse anything they do. Like, these are still fucking Nazis, so fuck them. But I kind of appreciate how you can still have him yeah, he has like these two are genuinely friends with each other, and like I can appreciate that at least. The issue ends actually with Hellboy finding like a old ammo depot in Vladimir's castle, and he's calling the BPRD and saying, "Hey, I found Vladimir. He's alive, but he's hurt. So I'm just gonna blow up the whole fucking castle. So pick me up if you can." And of course, he's using a Zinko phone, so it doesn't work. I don't know why this weird running gag that all of Zinko's technology is utter shit, but I'm fucking here for it. So after Hellboy sets the charges for that just enormous stockpile of weapons he found, he hears this voice calling his name and follows it through Vladimir's castle and finds Hecate, of course. I think this is Mignola did kind of combine Lamia and Hecate together because Lamia is usually depicted as a giant snake woman, and Hecate very rarely is. In fact, as far as I know, Hecate has little to nothing to do with snakes. She's more associated with wolves. There is a wolf in this issue, so that's something at least. So Hekate talks to Hellboy for a little bit, and she mentions how she's heard of Hellboy for a long time. This is actually the first time, I believe, we hear Hellboy's real name, Anang Unrama. So she knows about Hellboy, she knows he's been coming, but she's disappointed because, he spent the last 52 years fighting alongside humanity against other demons and supernatural beings. And she's like, okay, so you were brought here for a specific reason. You haven't fulfilled it. In fact, you've kind of gone on the opposite end, but we can still be a thing. Like, you and me, we can do shit together. And Hellboy's like, no, fuck you, and they fight for a little bit. It's actually a really good fight, with Hellboy and Akati kind of knocking each other around for a little bit, and then Hellboy gets a giant spear and stabs it through Akati's chest and knocks her off a window, and because she's like a creature of darkness and night, her being in daylight kills her. Like, she disintegrates and everything like that. The problem is, the fight with Akati took too long, so even though Hellboy gave himself an hour to get out of the castle, like, everything that happened, it took so long. As soon as Hellboy manages to kill Hekate, the castle explodes. And then Abe's team, with another dude named Clark, they actually call the BPRD again, and again mention how the Zinco phones are pieces of shit. Like, they actually mentioned that when Hellboy called last issue, they couldn't understand anything he said. But, like, they saw a giant fireball, and they just kind of know that Hellboy's doing something that caused a massive explosion, so they're gonna go and check it out and see how he's doing. After that, it cuts over back to Ilsa and Rasputin, and finally, something actually happens that is relevant to the fucking plot. Because up until now, they've just basically been talking and giving, like, backstory on Rasputin. Which is fine, but it's not actually advancing anything. Now it actually advances the plot, and it diverges into Hellboy's main story. Some sort of supernatural creature, a fairy of some kind, who is friends with Baba Yaga, brings Rasputin and Iron Maiden, and he explains, the story about Elizabeth Bathory, how she used Iron Maiden to murder virgin girls, take their blood, and bathe in it to gain eternal youth. He mentions how Hellboy actually fought Baba Yaga once and shot her eye out, and it hurt her so much she actually had to leave this plane of existence. And eventually Rasputin tells Ilsa, like, okay, if you want to survive what's happening, you're gonna have to get into the Iron Maiden. And she's like, okay, but it'll kill me? And he's like, well, yeah, but, like, I died, and now I have all this awesome powers, and I have all these awesome powers and shit, so if you die a little bit, like, the Orju Jihad will come to you too, and you'll get awesome cool powers and shit. And she's like, well, okay, I mean, if you say it'll happen, then sure, I'll go along with it. Yeah, she walks into the Iron Maiden and presumably dies. After that, the Romanian grandfather, he comes to the ruins of Vladimir's castle, and with two other dudes, and digs up Hellboy and drags him off to this crossroads somewhere else. It's never explained where it is, but, like, they chain him up to a post, and Rasputin finds him and says, like, you know what? I wanted to kill you, but now that you're here and you're going to die, and I know you're going to die because I've arranged it for it to happen, I ain't really happy about it. Like, I wanted you to help me with this shit, but you were just so fucking stubborn, and now it's not even me who wants you dead. It's the universe who wants you dead, because the universe hates a thing without a purpose. It's harkening back to the idea that, the universe, that old saying, the universe abhors a vacuum, which is kind of bullshit because Hellboy has his own purpose, but he's evil, so who gives a shit? But yeah, like, he leaves Hellboy, like, chained up to this post in this crossroads, just waiting for whatever is gonna get to him. But we circle back around one more time to to Leopold and Cronin, because Cronin has somehow he never explained it, but he somehow revived von Klemt. So they're just like talking about basically the plan, like why this army needs to exist. Basically, the army, it's an army of 666 supernaturally powered soldiers that are going to go out into the world, cause an infinite war, bring famine and plague, and finally death, and like it's invoking the idea of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And cause so much destruction and devastation that the Org Jahad will wake up, and then Rasputin will break open the Org Jahad's prison, and the Org Jahad will destroy the planet. And von Klemt is like, that's stupid. Like, I have a bunch of projects in my old lab that is now a smoking ruin, but fuck it, whatever. And if I had your magic number army, we could build all of it and rule the fucking planet. And then Leopold is just like, no, fuck you, we're doing what Rasputin wants, and gets a giant wrench and tries to smash von Klemt's glass and kill him and shit. And Cronin is like, no, fuck it, stop you, and he grabs a scalpel and stabs Leopold. So Leopold's fucking dead. So yeah, Leopold's dead, Ilsa's dead, like this whole thing is just kind of falling apart. And it's kind of really funny because Elsa is the only person on this team that Hellboy and the BPRT know about. Like, Leopold and Cronin are doing this whole fucking thing, like, in Norway, just doing their own thing. The heroes have no part in it, and it falls apart anyway. I don't know. I always love it when villains like fuck themselves over, and the heroes don't even know that they're a thing. So in the last issue, things get kind of trippy. So this issue starts off with Clark and Abe flying towards the Romanian village from the second issue that their grandfather was from. On those same Zinco jetpacks, but apparently theirs are working just fine. I'm starting to think that all the Zinco products getting fucked up are somehow Rasputin's doing, and they're working worse for Hellboy specifically because it's Hellboy. I don't know, but I think the fact that they're still using these things is kind of giving more evidence to the idea I was kind of talking about in the last issue, that despite Cronin and Leopold and all they're doing to help out Rasputin in his ultimate goals and everything like that, they're so unimportant. Not so much in this story, because they are important to the story, but they're so far under the radar of the good guys that they completely screw themselves over, and the good guys don't even, like, the BPRD never know that they're involved in anything, in any of this. So, like, again, I find that hilarious. Okay, so Abe and Clark are walking through this village, and they're noticing that it seems to be completely abandoned. Like, there's no one on the streets. They even mention that basically flying in on the streets on fucking jetpacks you'd think would get more attention, but like no one's noticing them, no one's coming outside or checking with them or anything like that, because they're all too afraid to leave their homes. And they also notice that crosses are painted on every door. And they mention that it's a vampire town and they're trying to protect it from vampires and shit. They're in this village because they have a signal on some kind of tracking device for a locator signal in Hellboy's belt, and they find it in the church of the priest that the Romanian grandfather was talking to a couple of issues ago. And they try talking to him, but they kind of realize a little bit too late that the priest is dead. and his head actually falls off his body, and then the floor collapses beneath them, and there's a bunch of spikes there, and Clark gets impaled in one and dies. So fuck. But Abe does manage to live, but like he breaks his wrist when he lands, and Rasputin is there and tells Abe, "Okay, so you Hellboy and Liz, you killed me, and I've set in motion events that will get my revenge on all of you. Like Hellboy had his ass kicked and is now waiting to die. Liz got fucked over physically and mentally, so like it was in fact Rasputin who put Liz in that weird trance earlier, and like you'll walk out of this, but you're gonna die eventually. I'm not gonna do it, but whoever does is going to do it in my name." And then he leaves Abe by himself. Like, it's weird he couldn't just kill Abe. He couldn't just try and kill Abe now, but fuck it, whatever. He's a fucking villain. He has to make shit complicated. But the head of the priest actually starts talking to him and tells him where to go to get to the ocean so he can get to safety. Then we move back to Hellboy, and this is where, like I said, this is where things get trippy. Because Vladimir shows up, like, fully dressed in his Napoleonic uniform, riding a fucking horse, holding a saber, and is shouting a bunch of mystic shit about Hecate, about how he's fucking immortal because of him, because of her, and how he's gonna kill Hellboy and drink his blood and all that bullshit. But then Hellboy cracks the stake that he's chained to, plows it into the horse that Vladimir's riding, and both the horse and Vladimir explode into skeletons. It's weird. And then those bird women, like, they start circling Hellboy again and announcing that, okay, so here's what happened. Vladimir basically gave the last of his power to revive Hecate, because the Iron Maiden that Ilse Humstein went into is there too. And once Vladimir explodes and is reduced to a skeleton, that fucking thing turns into a new body for Hecate and tries to eat Hellboy. So I'm pretty sure Elsa's just straight up dead. Like, she is gone. Whatever Rasputin was gonna do for her, that didn't happen. Like, she is just dead. And good, because she's a Nazi, so fuck her. Okay, so after, I think Hecate does actually eat Hellboy. It's weird, I don't know. But, like, he gets sent to this weird void, and he starts hearing these voices talking to him, and, like, talking about his destiny and what he's supposed to do. They call him Anung Rama again, and then his horns start growing back. Like, those things on his head are, like, filed off horns. So his horns start growing back, and his head is on fire. And they actually say the words "wake your devil heart," which is obviously where the story comes from. Like, and these three figures, one is the Baba Yaga, the other two we don't know who they are until much later on. But they're both important too. They look on as all this shit is happening to Hellboy, and he's going through this weird transformation, and it's like, you have to accept that you're this thing, and wake up the Ordru-Jahad and destroy the world and shit like that. And Hellboy is like, no, fuck you, I'm gonna live my own goddamn life. And he breaks off his horns, and like whatever weird psychedelic dimension he was in, like, just disappears. And he's back in the Crossroad Woods he was chained up in when Vladimir showed up. And then Kate finds him somehow. I don't know fucking how, but she finds him, and they talk a little bit, and she kind of fills Hellboy in on everything that happened with the other two teens. You know, Clark and Waller are both dead. Abe is fine. Like, they found him. His wrist is just fucked up. Liz is in shock because of what happened. Sidney was burned, but he's otherwise fine. She also mentions that a plane that was supposed to come get them exploded on the tarmac of the airport and killed the entire crew. So, like, yeah, this whole fucking thing was a disaster. And Hellboy mentions this because they didn't really understand what was going on, like what all of this was for. And even though he was in the middle of it, even he doesn't fully understand like what all of this is or what it all means and everything like that. Then a helicopter comes in and picks them both up and supposedly takes them back to the BPRD. While they're flying in, the pilot or one of the agents says to Hellboy no one could have found the Iron Maiden that he mentioned, and he's just like, well, no, I think that's fine. I don't want to see her again anyway. But that isn't the end because we had to go back to Cronin and Zinko and Leopold and all that. So Leopold's dead. He's just straight up dead. Which again, good. Fuck him. He's a Nazi. And Cronin basically starts blaming Von Klemt for everything that happened, which he isn't wrong, but also like take some fucking responsibility, you dumbass. And then Rasputin shows up, and he's just like, "What the shit is happening? Like, I left you assholes in charge of here because I thought you could handle this shit. What the fuck is going on?" And Cronin just throws Zinko right under the fucking bus. Like, he says, "Oh, he brought Von Klemt here. I didn't have anything to do with it." And Zinko's like, "No, what? Fuck?" And Rasputin's like, "No, fuck you. I struck you blind." And he actually makes Zinko blind. And he starts stumbling around the lab. And he hits a fucking self-destruct button on the sanctuary. So they're all dead now. And fuck them because they're Nazis. I mean, Zinko was a Nazi, but he was an asshole anyway, so. So yeah. That entire thing, like, again, it's fucking hilarious because Hellboy and the BPRD had no idea that was happening. Like, that was its whole own thing, and it fell apart on its own. I fucking love that. Okay, so obviously I had the trade paperback collection of Wake the Devil, so it comes with a few additions. Comes with an afterword from Mike Mignola where he talks about some of the writing process he had and like the trippy, weird ending with Hellboy and his horns growing back and all of that. Like, that was actually a last minute change he did because he was originally just going to have Hellboy and Vladimir fight, and that was going to be into it, but he decided to have a more bigger, more cosmic ending. And I gotta admit, that was a lot better than if it was just like these two fighting and that being the end of it. He also edited in an epilogue that follows Rasputin going to Yggdrasil and visiting the Baba Yaga, and them just like having a brief conversation about everything that's happened to him so far, and him and the Baba Yaga saying that him like performing this spell at the end of Scene of Destruction and actually waking up the Orjihad was really big because no human has ever managed to do that before, and he admits that this whole thing with Roderick and with Zinko and Vladimir and everything like that, like that was his own ideas. And Baba Yaga basically says, well, yeah, the details are probably yours, but like this was all still part of the dragon's plan. And Rasputin's son, like, I don't really like the idea of being a pawn, but like, dude, you kind of put yourself into this situation. Like, you can't really complain about it. And after like kind of wallowing in the fact that yeah, he kind of fucked up this time, Rasputin decides, you know what? I think I'm gonna keep going for a little bit longer. And the Baba Yaga actually does offer to have him stay with her, just kind of live in this space from now on. And yeah, like I said, he refuses. He decides to go on and everything like that. And he does go on, and I think he only has like one other major storyline before he's kind of effectively killed off permanently. I might talk about that sometime later, but I don't know. So yeah, that was Hellboy: Wake the Devil. Like I said, it's not like the best Hellboy story, but it's like this is a really fun story. It expands on the mythos of the world. It introduces a lot more interesting supernatural elements. It finally starts really exploring what Hellboy's destiny is and what he's meant to do and what the right hand of doom is, and finally reveals like Hellboy's real name. So like it's a really good fucking book. I highly recommend you checking it out. If I can find it on Comixology, I'll put a link for it in the description. So yeah, I'm Mercy, the Mad Hatter. I'll see you later, and happy Halloween. However that may be, considering how things are right now.